What would you do if the person you were dating turned out to be a monster? And not figuratively, but literally. Well, that's what happened to a woman back in 1999. In Fate magazine issue 728, published in 2015, there is a story sent from a woman named Kelly Ann Walker, in which she details a very bizarre experience she had with a man she was dating. An experience that ranks up there as one of the creepier ones I've read, as it suggests that the visitors are already here, living among us. The story began in 1999. Kelly Ann Walker, a 35-year-old single mother, was living alone with her young son when she began dating a man named Sam, whom she had met through her social circle. They both frequented the same parties and restaurants, and Kelly had come to know him as a bit of a player, a person who liked to live on the edge. He liked to drink, he liked to party, he liked to take risks. He was your typical bad boy, but he had a charm that drew people to him, Kelly noted. Before long, the two began seeing each other on a more serious basis, and he eventually became a major part of her life. At the time, she was not much interested in the paranormal. She had a vague idea of what ETs might look like from books, movies, and popular culture, but she was not familiar with the more outlandish aspects of the phenomenon. It just didn't interest her, especially since she had a young son to raise. The notion that a race of beings might be disguising themselves as humans and living amongst the human race never occurred to her. It was just too absurd. Things would change, however, following a late-night visit from Sam. It was just an average night. I awoke to Sam's signature tap on my bedroom window and the sound of the cab pulling away. I opened the window and he climbed inside. He had been at the bar all night and had been drinking pretty heavily, but was still charming and quite affectionate. Sometime in the heat of passion, he became something else entirely, and my perspective on the world changed completely. Moonlight was streaming through the window, so there was plenty of light with which to see. I looked up at his face, and one moment he was Sam, and the next moment he was something that wasn't human. The structure of his face changed completely. His eyes became bigger and farther apart. His nose and mouth lengthened into what I can only describe as a snout. His nose flattened and widened, and his lips almost disappeared into a slit. His neck became longer, the muscles more defined, and his shoulders seemed to widen when he lifted his head back. Sam's shoulder-length dark hair was suddenly gone. It was replaced by shiny scales of different color patterns that covered his entire body. His skin was suddenly cold to the touch. He reminded me of the velociraptor in Jurassic Park, but with a shorter snout. According to Kelly, the transformation lasted only a few seconds, and then suddenly he was Sam again. He was human again. Feeling fear and confusion, I caught my breath and pushed him away from me. My mind was trying to figure out what my eyes had just seen, but it was all so strange and happened so fast. Within seconds, he had shifted from human to non-human and back to human right in front of me, and it was a little more than my brain could handle. He asked me what was wrong, and all I could say was that I thought I had seen something strange, but I couldn't describe what it was. I blamed it on the moonlight, or on my being tired, tried to convince myself that I really had not just seen Sam become another creature. Sam teased her lightly about things that go bump in the night, before rolling over and falling asleep almost instantly. As I lay there beside him, I looked at him carefully. I listened to his breathing and watched him fall deeper into sleep. I touched him and his skin felt warm again. It was his smooth skin I was feeling, not the cold scales that had been there moments before. My mind was having a horrible time trying to sort out what had just happened. I tried talking myself into believing that it was just a trick of the light, that my overactive imagination combined with my lack of sleep and the moonlight caused me to see something that wasn't there. I knew, deep inside, that what I had seen was real. I knew with every ounce of my being that I had seen something out of this world happen in front of me, and trying to reason it away wasn't working. I was afraid to close my eyes. Wide awake with adrenaline pumping through her system, Kelly carefully slipped out of the bedroom. She sat in the living room for a while in a state of shock. She eventually fell asleep on the couch and woke in the morning to the sound of Sam getting out of bed. When he came into the living room, Kelly recalled that he seemed upset that he found her on the couch. She jokingly blamed it on him taking up too much of the bed, an issue that they had laughed about previously, and he seemed to buy it. In the back of my mind, I couldn't let go of what I watched him become. I didn't want him to touch me, but at the same time he was still the man that had climbed through my bedroom window many times before without any incident. The confusion I felt was overwhelming. I know he could tell that I was uncomfortable, but I don't think he realized that he had shifted in front of me. Kelly began giving Sam the cold shoulder, and eventually the two stopped seeing each other. There were no more midnight visits through her bedroom window, and Kelly did whatever she could to avoid him in social situations. I didn't feel safe when Sam was around, she noted. One curious detail, in the months and years that followed, Sam would often show up in her dreams. They were always very intimate in nature, and his face was always very close to hers, too close. Not once, however, did she see him transforming in her dreams. He was always in human form. He was always normal. She soon stopped seeing him around town until a chance encounter some 14 years later in a grocery store. She was waiting in a checkout line when he approached her. Sam told her that she looked great. He then asked her a number of questions, like if she was dating anyone, if she was still in the same line of work, and he asked how her son was doing. When she told him of her son's success in school and the profession he was in, she noticed that his reaction seemed genuine. Sam informed Kelly that he was now making his living in the casinos as a professional poker player. The meeting was unexpected and very uncomfortable for me. Sam seemed to take pleasure in my uneasiness. I gathered my grocery bags and quickly made my goodbyes, not letting him touch me, and not looking back when I left. I was relieved to be away from him. For a long time, Kelly told nobody, not even her son. She thought that she might be losing her mind, until she observed a program discussing reptile-like shapeshifters. It was at this moment that she began to understand that she wasn't the only person who had such an experience. Other people, she discovered, had reported the same thing, of being alone with someone and seeing them, briefly, transform into something else. She researched the topic further and began to accept that what happened to her was real. It wasn't a trick of the light or her imagination. It was real. If I hadn't seen Sam's transformation happen in front of my eyes, I never would have believed that something like that was possible. For many years, Kelly pondered the various aspects of that night, the creature, the transformation. She wondered exactly what Sam was, and what factors might have come into play to allow her to see his true form. Maybe his guard was down because he had been drinking. Maybe he lost control over his form for a moment because we were being intimate. Possibly it was a combination of both that distracted him enough to lose the control it must take to maintain the appearance of being human. I can't even imagine how much energy it takes to keep up that kind of facade.
This story happened in the New Year's Eve 2010. I'm visiting my friends in our city before me and my family starts our New Year's Eve celebration. When suddenly, I received a phone call from my uncle. My uncle asked me if I can visit them before our New Year's Eve celebration starts. My uncle lives in the countryside of my city. I said yes, and I asked my friend if she could come with me. My friend said yes, so we travel outside of our city around 09:30 p.m. in my motorbike. We arrived at my uncle's house at 10:00 p.m. My uncle is very happy. We talk, we eat and drink. But I don't drink that much cause I'm gonna drive back home. Me and my friend spend a good amount of time there when I noticed that it's already 11. :30 p.m., so we just got 30 minutes to go back to our city. So we tell my uncle that we're going home. And we start traveling back home. But we just got 30 minutes before the New Year's Eve starts. So me and my friend decided to change route. I knew a shortcut road in that area, but we have to travel past the rice field. I know that road, but I don't travel there at night cause it's so sketchy, there's no houses near that area. But me and my friend don't have a choice that time, so we choose that shortcut road. When we're traveling that stretch of road, I noticed that my friend looks in the middle of the rice field and starts shaking. So I asked my friend what happened, and my friend answered in a trembling voice, "What's that thing in the middle of the rice field?" I was driving that time and the road is rocky, so I just look for a second in the middle of the rice field. And I saw something, but my brain can't make out what I see, so answered my friend, "It's just a walking tree." Then I start to question myself. A moving tree. Cause that thing is moving, it looks like it's moving. So I stop my motorbike to take a closer look at that thing or whatever it is. Then I was shocked, scared and trembling in fear. When I looked in the middle of the rice field, I saw a big horse. Tall as a tree, but this horse is not walking in 4 legs, it's walking in 2 legs with hands like human. The creature is looking in the sky in the direction of the fireworks. So I start my motorbike and just hit the gas on it. My friend is screaming and I'm so scared while we're getting out of that place. When me and my friend is near our city, a strong gust of wind hit us. We almost fell to the ground, then my motorbike stopped working. I tried to start it a couple of times, but it's not starting. We're in our city, so we decided to leave my motorbike at the auto repair shop cause it New Year's Eve, no one is there to repair my motorbike. So we went home that night. In the morning I came back to the auto repair shop for my motorbike. But the mechanic asked me what happened to my motorbike. And I answered, "Why? What's the problem with my motorbike?" The mechanic told me that I need to pay a large amount of money to repair a motorbike that was hit by a lightning. He told me that all of my motorbike's electrical parts was burned and needed to be replaced. And he showed me all of it. And again I felt scared cause me and my friend is sitting in that motorbike that time it stops. There is no way it was hit by a lightning.
Very interesting stuff when I was reading this, so I thought I would definitely share it here. It comes from a user called Fearless Aoli 5956, and they aptly titled theirs as "The Truth About Skinwalkers." So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here, and then I'll give my own thoughts and opinions on it afterward. So here's what they stated. A few years ago, I dated this Native American girl from the southern UT Indian Reservation in Ignacio, Colorado. Me at the time being a black 20-year-old from the hood of Baltimore, Maryland, I knew almost nothing about Native American culture, legends, or any of that stuff. So when she first told me about skinwalkers and that they're real, I just knew I had to learn everything I could about them. And what did I do? I went to her hometown for a few months and learned a bunch of stuff about skinwalkers. So I'll pass down to you, the reader, all of this information, scary stories, and lore I've learned from her family members and friends during my time in Ignacio, Colorado. Disclaimer: all the information in this post was told to me by people on the reservation. They are not my own thoughts or opinions on skinwalkers, but things believed to be facts by some of the Native Americans in the area of Colorado and New Mexico I've had a chance of speaking with. So without further delay, let's talk about skinwalkers. Number 1, skinwalkers are witches. So for starters, skinwalkers are definitely witches, not cryptids or whatever else you people are calling them. They are witches who possess the power of shape-shifting. Lots of people in the town told me skinwalkers can be from any tribe, but are usually Navajo. Then again, the Navajo and the Utes typically don't like each other from what I've seen, If you want to know why, research Skinwalker Ranch. So I don't know. This could be true, or it could just be blank talking between tribes. People in the town who have claimed to have seen skinwalkers will describe them to look differently. In a weird sense, they shapeshift. Her uncles claimed to see one that looked like a big hairy thing. Another guy said he saw one that looked like a huge white dog creature. And her cousin and friend said they saw one that looked like a goat with big eyes standing on two legs wearing a jacket. Weird, right? There were even people in the town suspected of being skinwalkers or just indulging in quote-unquote bad medicine, which basically just means witchcraft. These people are known as bad medicine men. There are good medicine men as well, but these good medicine men are not skinwalkers. They can, however, combat spells put on a person by a bad medicine man. Number 2, don't whistle at night. One thing that attracts them that most of you probably knew about is whistling. People on the reservation would actually get upset if anyone were to whistle at night. My girlfriend actually told me this story of when she was younger with her friends during nighttime out in the boonies, which is basically just in the middle of nowhere. She kept whistling just to be an a-hole and piss off her friends. She only stopped when something in the distance whistled back the exact same way she had whistled. Now, this could have been just a weirdo whistling at a young girl for whatever reason, but that theory seems a lot less likely when you take into account she was at a friend's house and the closest neighbor was about a mile away. Number 3, they don't care for outsiders. If you're hoping to see a skinwalker in person and aren't Native American, don't have any relationships with Native Americans, or live near a Native American reservation, you may be out of luck. It's believed around there that skinwalkers usually won't show themselves to someone just visiting the area, especially if that someone isn't native. However, if you spend a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time in the area, you might catch one. Number 4, they can't directly harm you, but if you're afraid of them, they will F with you. Usually I see people online saying no Native American likes to talk about skinwalkers because this catches their attention. Well, everyone, Ignacio, were really open to talking about them, especially her father, even though he himself said skinwalkers know when you talk about them. When I asked him why he still likes talking about these shape-shifting witch monsters without fear of them catching on, he told me he flat out wasn't afraid of them. In fact, he wanted to smoke with a guy he thought was a skinwalker because the skinwalker scared his Hispanic girlfriend so bad she skipped town, illegally crossed back over to the Mexican border, and stayed in Mexico for a while. He told me skinwalkers won't outright attack you or kill you, but they can still cause you harm. They might do this by jump scaring you or causing you to crash your car, killing your livestock, or casting spells. If a skinwalker or bad medicine man gets a strand of your hair or something else of yours, they can cast a spell on you, causing you to become sick or giving you very bad luck. They've even been known to separate couples, just like how they scared his girlfriend back over the border. Eventually, she came back and told everyone about her skinwalker encounter, but I'll tell that story another time. Now, that's just some of the info I got while I was down there. I've even got scary stories and blank too. There are even things in the Colorado, New Mexico area a lot scarier and more unexplainable than skinwalkers. Let me know if any of you want to know more. And then that's it. That's everything associated that the user Fearless Aioli 5956 stated in their guideline.
Between 1863 and 1866, thousands of Navajo were sent to the reservation of Bosque Redondo. At least 3 major migrations occurred, with the Army's chosen path sometimes being as far as 400 miles. The Navajo were never told where they were going, or how far it would be, and they were often not allowed to bring supplies or prepare for the trip at all. There are stories of pregnant women or old people being shot by the Army when they couldn't continue. Many became sick or malnourished. Conditions were so miserable that many of the Navajo began to believe that their gods had literally abandoned them. In desperation, several Navajo attempted to flee, and some were successful. Rumors began to circulate amongst some of the exhausted Navajo that these escapees had gotten away through the aid of shape-shifting, turning themselves into coyotes and rabbits and mice, and slipping by unseen by the army. Here's the thing. I had this whole part edited and written out in the first draft, and I realized that I don't know the actual origin of this claim, that some Navajo anamorphs to freedom.
Were said to have turned to shape-shifting to escape the terrible conditions.
I went through all my stuff and remembered it came from that Noah Nez article. In it, he says, this reported incident, which is the witch purge, is said to come from the days of the Long Walk of the Navajo. Apparently, it was during these dire times that some Navajo people would shapeshift to escape their impoverished living conditions. He doesn't provide a source for that. Above this, he mentions the article by Allison, and directly following that, he mentions the author Raymond Locke. The article by Allison, it's definitely not the source of the Animorphs to Freedom story. So maybe it came from Raymond Locke. These are the rest of Noah's references right here. My point is that this seems important to figure out. Maybe it's common knowledge, and I just don't know. And my research sucks balls, which is totally possible. Or maybe Noah made it up, although that seems unlikely. Really, it's not a matter of whether or not people shapeshifted. It's whether or not this was a real thing that the Navajo spoke about to each other, a thing that they actually believed happened, or if it's just a story, invented through a journalistic game of telephone. I don't know the answer to that. And I wish I did, because I think it's as close to the true origin of the Skinwalker myth as anything else that I've read. Whatever. Shapeshifting, skinwalkers, all that stuff aside, the Long Walk was beyond horrific. It was essentially a death march.
Okay, Marvin and Grace, you have carved a very controversial figure here. And you're telling me that there's a positive aspect to the Skinwalker, or Unigloshi. How do you say it in Navajo?
Unigloshi.
Tell me about the positive side. Because I know everything in Navajo culture has a positive and a negative, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you're up.
Who, me?
Somebody. Let's hear it. I want to hear about the positive side of this.
Well, one of our late uncle told us about the Unigloshi, why they made the Unigloshi is that back in the old days, they used the Unigloshi skinwalking to go to another mountain to travel in the skinwalking to gather medicine from other mountains like what do you call San Francisco Peak and Grants,
the Sacred Mountains.
The four sacred mountains.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they use it to gather the natural herb.
So they used it to speed up the process.
Yeah, for the
cover ground quickly.
Uh-huh. And I don't know if they really were like this the way that we were told about it. We just had to,
take a wild guess how it looks the way.
Use your imagination.
Use our imaginations. We never seen one, but we just figured, think this is how it looks, and then the image of
the way our late uncle told us about it, how people used to look when they take off from the ceremony place and then go to the sacred mountain to get the plants.
So you're saying that the people turned it bad?
Nowadays, people turn it bad and they use that skinwalking against
other people. Some people that has good things, like have money, sheep, cows. That's what they don't like. The way they're not like that with their family, so they have to probably turn against them and use it on them for evil way.
So it's based on jealousy and greed?
Jealousy and greed and all that stuff. So that's what they do now, these days. But back in those years back...
In the early days, they were different.
They were
different.
different.
Used a different
It
way
was probably only
to travel.
one purpose, to let the medicine men learn how to use them to gather the plants, medicines. That was the only thing that they put it there for, but some other guy came along and used it the wrong way, so now people, that's how they use it.
So as human beings, like we generally do, we turn things negative that were supposed to be positive.
Supposed to be positive way, only when there's like ceremony going on, things like they run out of medicine, like plants, herbs, and all that stuff. What they use on their patients, when they run out of it, they have to use that thing to travel faster and bring back what they wanted from the mountains. So that's what they used. They was really put there for that, but.
So by carving this sculpture, you're trying to present the positive side again?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to.
And that actually, it's the subtle thing. Sasquatch is so keen at observing every detail of its environment. That's what it does, and sometimes they'll mess with things and see if you have enough heightened awareness to pick it up. So I took this leaf and I put it on the patio of this cabin I was staying in. And it sat there for a while, okay, it didn't blow away for some reason, and after a couple of days it got kind of old and crusted, so I crumpled it and let it blow away, alright? But nothing actually happened. Then when the conference is over, there is a red rock on my doorstep, a lava rock. And this immediately throws up a red flag. I think, okay, these dudes out here are messing with me. They're trying to get me. Nobody's gonna get me. So I interrogated a guy named John Bertoli that does light language, another dude, Albert LaGrange, who I saw that mountain with last year, and also James Gillian, because he's got a good sense of humor, and he might have been trying to get me. So I got all these guys pretty much together, at least in the same vicinity, and interrogated them about which one of them put that rock there and was messing with me because of what happened last year. Everybody knows about that. Okay, and pretty much I come to a situation that it wasn't these guys, all right? I go back down there after that, back to the cabin, and I find these odd rock structures around the cabin. And they're so subtle, and some of them are too, I'm trying to take pictures of them, but it doesn't do it justice because it's so minuscule. Two river rocks together, and other rocks that were stuck in the ground and flipped up, and a pine cone stuck to another one that seemed to have a leaf wrapped around it, all right? That was very odd. That very much caught my attention because it was something different about the detail out there, all right? And something that I know nobody that was left after the conference did. So I take 2 more leaves and put faces in them and put them in between these structures that I found, all right? And they sat there for about 2 days and nothing happened. On about the 3rd day, I find a quail feather in the back of the cabin, in a spot that's kind of looking back in the back 40. Where it was positioned is just odd. I should have taken a picture of it, but I started tripping out. This quail feather had white spots all around it. It was very little though, but the way it was sitting there, I never saw any birds back there. This was very, very odd, and it seemed like some type of a communication, all right? Not long after discovering this feather, I start hearing kind of melody whistling sound, and I keep hearing it, and I look up in the trees, the evergreens are pretty tall there, and I see a squirrel, a baby squirrel, and this baby squirrel starts coming down the tree and comes to a branch that's standing maybe 5 feet away from my head, and it's just listening. It's just doing this whistling kind of mellow type of melody, and it's so odd I can't even reproduce the sound to you, all right? That it's looking at me like that, and it goes back up the tree, and when it starts moving around, this baby squirrel is moving so fast that I optically can't track it almost. So that's another very odd thing. It comes down a little bit more. I went and got some cashews and tried to get it to come down closer, but it took off Eventually I wound up just eating the cashews, and then it comes down again, making this sound. Now I do know squirrels. Where I grew up, there were squirrels all over the place. They try to feed them sometimes. I know the sounds they make. This was not one of them, all right? And neither have I ever seen a squirrel move that fast. After I ate the cashews, it comes back down on that same branch, looks at me like that, and then takes off. And when it takes off, it makes the sound again and takes off down towards the back 40 behind this cabin, where there's Sasquatch activity, all right? I sat there and wound up being just stunned when this thing took off and what just had happened. All right, I was left thinking immediately, did I just encounter some type of a shapeshifter? All right, so that's kind of what I'm left feeling like. And it definitely wasn't this squirrel that could have, in that shape, turned those rocks over or left that feather there, but yet it was connected to this whole situation. And I've heard about Sasquatch having the ability to shapeshift before. I don't think we know what we're dealing with, all right? This squirrel, this energy felt feminine also, not like the elder, the one I dealt with before. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. That needs to be investigated more, or we need to find out more what we're dealing with. So that's the situation that led me to believe that I encountered a shapeshifter, all right? And that the Sasquatch, I've heard several people saying they've seen them transform and shapeshift before. But it's one thing to hear about this, to know about the science of it. It's another thing to see the movies and see them shapeshift and all that. But what is it like when one of these beings really jumps in our field of awareness? That's where I'm coming from.
There is a great variety of supernatural beings in Central America that at night go around rural roads or city streets. Phantoms of popular folklore such as La Llorona, or Wailing Woman, and El Charro Negro, or Black Charro, who wander around, scaring people who have acted wrongly, or any skeptic that dares challenge them. Among these entities stands out one of pre-Hispanic origins, the Nahual, which derives from the Nahuali word Nahuat, meaning to disguise, although some would translate it to double or projected. It isn't actually an otherworldly creature, but a mortal man capable of adopting the form of a fantastic animal. A skill that might be innate, or at least could have been acquired, that allows him to transform himself into a black dog with fiery eyes, a talking snake, or a tailless and earless donkey, just to mention a few of his terrifying transformation. Native Americans' traditions say that at the moment a person is born, the spirits of nature appoint an animal guide to them as a totem, which will guard them for life, and that these guardians show themselves in the dreams of those they protect. It is well known that one of the attributes or greatest gifts magic has is shape-shifting. One of the most dangerous and advanced incantations of this art. There are beliefs stemmed from occultism that shamans and shapeshifter sorcerers had such a domain of this power, especially in Central America, that they could take the form and adopt the abilities of their representing animal to use them in many ways, not always in well-intentioned one. These shapeshifters, known as Nahuales, are protagonists of mysticism and famous for being essentially elusive in Mexico and a great extension of Central America. Legends from Mexican tradition state that a Nahual can detach from his own skin and transform in different creatures, such as jaguars, eagles, coyotes, or ocelots. It is also believed that if a man were capable of knowing his primal animal, he would be able to use this magic. This creature is usually linked to evil or mischievous actions and hosts a particular ability of transmuting himself at will into a determined animal or even an inanimate object like lightning or a fireball. The numerous legends and myths involving these Nahuales make it difficult to pinpoint what exactly they shift into. In other cases, the less scrupulous Nahuales would use this power to simply have fun and roam around as animals, or to cast jinxes and curses to those unwary who walk on lonely places at night, and at some point savagely attack them in order to get a part of their bodies to be used in black magic rituals. Many primitive depictions found in old caves in Central American areas show werewolf-looking people, despite werewolves having an origin in Europe. There is also word of stories from colonial times that talk about hunters, both natives and Spanish settlers, who would catch and kill an animal during the night, yet in the morning they'd be shocked to see the animal corpse had turned into a human one. There are also tales that go from Central to South America in countries like Venezuela and Colombia, of many who claim to have seen witches transformed into giant black birds, walking on the roofs of houses in rural areas late at night. They say that if a weird-looking bird is seen outside a house for several days in a row, it can be inferred that it is no ordinary bird, but a Nahual that seeks to do wrong to one of the household members. For some pre-Hispanic people, a Nahual was a wizard called Talaca de Calot, or Owl Man, indicating they only appeared at night. The reason Nahuales only act during the night is that, according to the Mexican worldview, the rituals that lead to these animal transformation work better at this hours, and they are also protected by the god Black Tezcatlipoca, the Lord of Darkness. It is said that to achieve said metamorphosis, the ritual can be done in two ways. The first way requires the sorcerer to wait for night to fall, so he can wear the fur or feathers of the animal he wishes to shift into, and use his magical arts to perform the transformation. The second way deals with a more painful metamorphosis, since the sorcerer must fragment himself, willingly get rid of some parts of his body, eyes, legs, arms, or even his entrails. This way, if one wants to eliminate a Nahual, the best way is to follow him and see where the transformation took place and steal the part of the body he left behind. For this will prevent the Nahual to go back to his original form, and at sunrise, he will die. The ritual works better in moonless nights, for the Lord of Darkness is at the peak of its power and can influence the mortal world. At sunrise, when the first ray of light hits the earth, Tezcatlipoca loses its influence, which is transferred to Quetzalcoatl, the god of the sun and light. This is why the ritual loses its effectiveness, and the sorcerer must come back to his original form. Would he fail to do so, he would die and leave a corpse with human and animal features.
In 2016, economic recovery had not yet reached the rural areas of Arizona. Max Bradley would go hunting with his dad, Michael, most every night. Their target was coyote, $20 per hide. With luck, they might bag a deer to feed the family. Even though July 4th was a holiday, they had no luck that evening, and Max regretted missing the fireworks in Flagstaff. They didn't have a car, not even a four-wheeler. Walking home, they cut across a corner of Indian territory, the Navajo Nation reservation. The beam of Mike's flashlight illuminated some rocks covered with blood. At first they thought coyotes were responsible. When a pack of coyotes attack, they pick off one animal that is young or weak or old. However, they were looking at the bodies of 3 deer. Something had stumbled on their den, but it was not a normal predator. The dead animals showed no signs of being fed upon, and they certainly had not been slaughtered for sport. Michael told his son he suspected a skinwalker. Max objected. A skinwalker was a shaman, wasn't it? Mike said, "I saw this once before, when I was your age. Skinwalkers may no longer be holy men, but they are men, and they are just as susceptible to mental illness. Maybe once in a generation, one of these shaman will go mad. Now that we have crossed its path, we have only one chance to leave this reservation alive. Either he hunts us, or we hunt him." Max carried a .22 carbine. His father had a shotgun. They followed a trail of blood until they came to an old mining camp. The shack located there was little more than a foundation, surrounded by the few wooden planks that remained standing. The Crimson Trail was now accompanied by human footprints, and the footprints led up to the shack. First they heard a chilling shriek, like the howl of a tortured human soul. Then they saw a naked man, covered only with an animal hide. The skinwalker showed his face and blinked against the beam of the flashlight. His face was painted white, and he wore a leather necklace with a single bead of turquoise. His lips curled into a snarl. "Spread out," Mike told his son. He began pumping his shotgun. Max fired all the cartridges in his 10-round magazine, then reloaded the .22 with a spare. The medicine man seemed to be waiting until they ran out of ammunition. Apparently, he had not been hit by a single round when he started walking towards the older Bradley. He leaned forward as if to spit on the old man. Instead, he released a cloud of powder out of his puffed-up cheeks directly into Mike's face. The dust had an immediate narcotic effect. Michael collapsed, and while his son watched in horror, the skinwalker made good his escape. That night, Maxwell carried his father home on his back. It was 2 days before the paralyzing effect of the powder wore off. After that, Mike would speak only of leaving town, of moving out of state, before the skinwalker could track down his family. And finally he told Max about the time he had gone up against a mad shaman. He was with Max's grandfather. Except Grandpa did not survive the encounter. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was when Michael saw Grandfather again, about 10 years after he died, because the medicine man was wearing his skin.
It was 1962, Houston, Texas. Molly Jo Dayton was working alone at a donut shop 7 nights a week. She lived in a garage apartment which was 1/2 mile from the shop. At around midnight every night she would get off work and make the short walk home. The street she walked down had no sidewalk and very few lights, so to protect herself, she always carried a Coke bottle in one hand and a roll of pennies in the other. One evening, just before she was about to lock up, Molly heard a bark at the drive-in window. She went and opened the window and saw sitting on the ground in the driveway, a large black dog wagging its tail. Assuming it to be a stray, she went and retrieved a handful of donuts and tossed them at the pooch. She then shut the window and carried on with the task of closing up. As she locked up and started her short walk home, she noticed that the stray dog seemed to be waiting for her. The animal calmly walked beside her all the way home, not unlike how a pet would. It had been a chilly night, and when she got to her apartment and was about to head up the steps to go inside, she told the dog that the building manager forbid pets, and that she would let him come inside and sleep, but he would have to leave first thing in the morning, because the owner, who had a workshop under her apartment, might hear it. The dog seemed to nod, and Molly got the very bizarre sense that the dog could understand each word she spoke to him. She noted that the dog had the bluest eyes she'd ever seen, and she found him to be adorable. Everything went as planned, and the dog left the apartment the next morning and quickly scampered off, almost as if trying to avoid detection. Eventually this became a routine. Every night the black dog would meet her at the donut shop and would accompany her on her walk back to the apartment. It would come inside and sleep and would quickly leave in the morning before the owner arrived at his workshop. Molly felt great comfort knowing the dog would be there to walk with her, and she very much liked its friendly demeanor. She felt safe in his presence, and she no longer felt apprehensive walking home after midnight. This went on for about 2 weeks. One night she had some friends over for beers and had gotten a ride with them. The black dog was waiting at the foot of her steps, almost as if it knew it did not need to go to the donut shop. Her friends thought this a little odd, and noted that it seemed almost overprotective of her, often burying its teeth at anyone who got too close to her. Molly herself recalled how on a lot of nights she would wake up and the black dog would be sitting on the floor with his head resting on the bed staring at her, not unlike how a lover might look at a sleeping partner. This would scare the hell out of me, Molly noted in her letter to Jovinsky. Though everything changed one night. Molly had just returned home from work and the dog had come inside. She headed for the bathroom where she sat doing her business and reading a newspaper. I never shut the door. Nobody was there but me and the dog. I heard the dog's toenails clicking on the floor as he walked up and sat down at the doorway. I paid no mind until out of the corner of my eyes I saw something black shoot up high. I turned my head to look, having no fear, for, as I said before, I was comforted by this black dog. It wasn't a black dog, but a man with the most beautiful blue eyes and wearing a black suit. The minute I started to scream, I saw this man take the form of the black dog once more. As soon as I could, I went to the door, opened it, and I told the black dog to leave, and I never wanted to see him again. Apparently the dog, or whatever it was, listened, as Molly never again saw the black dog after that night.